What's up, everybody? Welcome inside the MRN studios. This is another episode of NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering, where we dive in all episode long to everything NASCAR regional. My name is Chris Wilner, MRN pit reporter, MRN announcer Kyle Rickey out in Connecticut. K-Rick, the Olympic break is officially over. I know it didn't really affect us on the short track side of things, but did you have a nice time maybe tuning in to what's been happening in Paris?
Well, with the time change, it was a little bit easier because it was earlier over here instead of usually when it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I got to admit, watched a little gymnastics. I know my family is into gymnastics, so that was probably what I watched the most. When Flow Racing wasn't on the TV, because there was obviously a lot going on Flow over the last couple of weeks. The ARCA Menard Series has been in action, the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour, the Cars Tour, short tracks from across the country. So definitely a lot to tune into and keep up with. Don't really want to call it a break because it was very much pretty busy here as we get toward the late summer months here.
I know, that's what I love about NASCAR regional racing. It's almost like that got put a little bit more on the spotlight, was all the action that you just mentioned, because the National Series was off. So I honestly think this was a win situation. You get the guys on the national schedule a little bit of a break, and then it highlights our NASCAR regional drivers for sure. And there was a lot going on in the news. We're going to get to that here on a jam-packed show for you. Of course, we'll recap all the Cars Tour drama. We actually have Treyten Lapcevich, who crossed the finish line first, is now scored second after disqualification. We'll dive into all of that with him on the phone. He'll join us in segment number 2. And then, of course, all the ARCA news and the calendar for this week, which is, again, going to be huge as we already are just in the middle of August. But great week of racing. Pardon my voice. I'm still recovering from Road America this weekend with the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, and what a great weekend we had up there. And maybe one day, I know Ross Chastain was up there. He said, I hope we come back on NASCAR. So fingers crossed. They were talking about maybe one day getting us back. We'll see if that happens. But let's dive into the weekend that was, Kyle, and we'll start with ARCA Menard Series at Elko, the home track for William Sawalich. He picked up the win in dramatic fashion. I don't think I can recall, I know Cars Tours had a few of these, but a finish 3 wide sideways with all the contact in the world, and somehow William Sawalich came on the right side of that. What did you think of the finish of that race? I knew William would basically do whatever it took to win that race, but man, I thought LeVar Scott maybe had it at the end.
And LeVar Scott had a good car, led a bunch of laps, I believe 100 of the 250 laps. He was out front. Obviously, Sawalich was out front for the other 150. You had Chris Wright there jamming in on the bottom, make it 3 wide at the line. 0.04 of a second between the top 3. One of the closest finishes I have seen in quite some time. Great race. Elko always puts on a great race, the shortest track that the ARCA Menard Series goes to. And, just enough cautions to keep everybody close, and some familiar faces at the front of the field. And we have still yet to have a regular win in the ARCA Menard Series. 12 races in. Let's see, Williams won 5, and he's, I think, 11th in points with 5 less races, or 4 less races that he has started.
Yeah, it's incredible. And just when I thought LeVar Scott would end that streak, he misses out by this much. Is there anything you think he could have done differently? Because, watching the replay of that after watching it live, it's like, I mean, you can only make that car so many lanes wide without crashing. And I feel like William just capitalized maybe on a little bit of a mistake. But overall, I thought LeVar had probably his best race of the year.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think he could have done anything different other than try to, clean them both out. And I don't think he would have come out on top then either. So he did what he had to do. The margin of victory at the front was thousandths of a second. So close, so fun to watch. And, look forward to the rest of the ARCA season, their short track season now behind them. Off to the 2-mile Michigan Oval here in a couple weeks.
That's right. Yeah, we get to put the short track on hiatus for just a little bit, but boy, that has produced some of the best racing of the year, and Elko was certainly not different. Now, with that second-place finish, LeVar Scott does move up to second in the championship. Andres Perez is still there, Mr. Consistency, 44-point lead over his teammate here as they move on to Michigan on Friday, August the 16th. Now to the short track at Lancaster Motorplex for the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour, the New Way Auto Parts 150, won by the guy who I'm pretty sure in our preview last week, I said could pick up the victory. Don't want to pat myself on the back because we're going to have to go and check the receipts, but Austin Beers picked up the win here this year at Lancaster. Again, another, it seems to be a strategy type of season where we've seen this pit strategy of staying out late versus pitting. Austin Beers did that and it picked himself up the win.
He did. Was able to stay out and gain a few spots on the racetrack. Started alongside Matt Hirschman, able to lead the final laps of the event to pick up the race win. Interesting race. A lot of cautions.
Yes.
They fought Mother Nature all day. Practice was delayed. There was question whether they would even get the event in just because of the wet grounds. They couldn't get the track dry. Sent the cars out for practice. It was wet. Talking to a lot of the drivers after the event, they weren't even close to full throttle during practice, and not much change during the race. So a lot of tiptoeing around that half-mile Lancaster Oval on Saturday night. Unfortunately, there were a lot of single-car spins because of either hitting the moisture or doing a little bit too much sliding around and trying to avoid the moisture. But overall, good race, great crowd. Mikey Myers for once, I think the third year in a row, put on a great event. A lot of pyro, a lot of energy around that. What turned out to be a single day event. And talking with teams, if it would have got rained out, pushed to the next day, they either wouldn't have been able to stay or they would have lost a lot of crew members. So just because of where it is and kind of out of the modified region up in Lancaster. So. Yeah. Tough call for NASCAR, but they ran the event. They did the best they could and got a great event because of it.
Maybe in the future we get a kind of a option tire like we. No. Wait, that's way too far-fetched. Or even a wet weather tire from Hoosier. I don't know. Anything's possible at this point. But like you mentioned, though, it was interesting to see the drivers tiptoe around that racetrack with the grip level going away with the moisture still in the racetrack. But I tell you what, you talked about single car spins. How about Ron Silk? Wasn't a weekend he wanted. And Justin Bonsignor has slowly chipped away at his championship lead. Silk getting spun around there in the middle of the race. And interesting that, I don't know, kind of almost uncharacteristic. Now, I can't recall Kyle did if he had any help or whatsoever, but definitely uncharacteristic. And again, the championship now tightens up.
1 point, I believe it is, between the top two, Silk and Bonsignor, the most recent champions on the tour, or two of the more recent champions on the tour, heading to a very familiar racetrack to both of them, the Thompson Speedway Motorsports Park, 1 week from now.
That's right. Wednesday, August 14th, the midweek show coming up next week for the Modified Tour. Now let's dive into Z-Max Cars Tour before we get to our guest this week, Treyten Lapcevich, and the drama ensued with the Window World 125 and the Reverend 100 for the Pro Late models out at North Wileksboro Speedway. I don't even know where to begin. I guess let's start first with the late model stock tour. A great crowd. Of course, anytime we go to North Wileksboro, this was the makeup event for what happened in May when we had the complete washout and had to build Noah's Ark to get out of Wilkes County. But Treyten Lapcevich goes on to win, at the time, his first career Cars Tour race in a really good battle. I mean, you look at all the leaders, all the familiar names at the front of the field in this one. Post-race tech, unapproved part, gets disqualified. Corey Heim, who was in the field, ends up picking up the win, although Treyten is now slated as finishing second. Kyle, let's first just talk about the race. Anything surprise you? Obviously, a lot of contact, which we're going to get that at North Wileksboro Speedway, but did anything surprise you about that race Saturday?
No, you had that big incident early in the race on lap 9 that took out a bunch of big names, but for the most part, a lot of familiar faces at the front of the field. You mentioned Corey Heim ultimately picking up the win. I think my question, didn't really hear much from Kevin Harvick running mid-pack, just out of the top 10. Harvick in that race. Also, I think they had to fight through rain. They had a rain shower earlier in the day and pushed the event up several hours, if I recall. What's a disqualification? I think is my biggest question. You don't get disqualified from anything and finish second. Yeah. And he's right there in the thick of the championship point battle, 30 some odd points back. So could still win the title. A lot of racing to go in the Cars Tour. Obviously, a true disqualification would have taken him out of the point battle. But now second place points, pretty good. Yeah, I have a lot of questions. And why Tuesday afternoon at 4:00.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm not one to, dive into a book here. Well, maybe now and then, but I don't know if I really want to dive into the Cars Tour rule book. But we may need to get Kip Childers on this show to discuss maybe what the reasoning was behind that. And of course, we're going to talk to Treyten about his side of things as well. But you're right. It's certainly interesting because it's kind of unprecedented. We don't really see that when it comes to disqualifications, but again, helps him out a little bit, still be in the championship hunt with the second place finish. Minnie Tyrell was up there. Carson Kvapil, of course, was up there in the top 5. Brendan Butterbean Queen continues his championship hunt, still right there because Connor Hall was swept up in that lap 9 incident. So a bad day for Connor turns into a good day for Butterbean, and then Gia Ruggiero as well was pretty much a factor all race long. 28 points, Kyle. Now that's the point lead for Connor Hall over Queen, despite, again, losing that lap, or losing a tire that was impounded as well. So remember, he had a tire that was not impounded post-race, so he lost a lap. So that's also crediting his low finish in the running order. Brent Cruz, again, haven't talked a lot about him, Cars Tour winner this year. He's right there in second now, too. So Butterbean's got company trying to chase down Connor Hall as well. I like Cruz, man. I mean, he's sneaky consistent, and again has good wheels underneath him as well. But what do you think about Brent Cruz maybe possibly pulling off the upset here with still a few races to go?
Yeah, consistency is key, and he has been quietly consistent. And sometimes those drivers are the ones that kind of show up in the fall out of nowhere. Yeah. Nobody's expecting them. Nobody's watching them on the racetrack, and boom, they're there within 10, 15, 20 points of challenging for the championship. So, I like his consistency, and he's finishing these races, and you never know what's going to happen these next few weeks.
That's right. Again, they're coming up with Ace Speedway, which actually was rescheduled earlier this week due to the impending, I guess, tropical storm. Debbie is now what we're calling her, but she's making her way through the remnants of Tropical Storm Debbie. But Cars Tour went ahead and postponed to the following Friday. So Friday, August 15th will be Ace Speedway. And quickly, before we get to our guests, also the Pro Late models were in action out at Wilkes County. Reverend 100. Birthday boy, Tristan McKee, who not too long ago was basically running Millbridge Speedway every week in the micro division, and now he's out here winning a Cars Tour Pro Late Model race, his first career win on his 14th birthday. Really good race car driver, up-and-comer, again, 14 years old, so the sky's the limit on his potential, but that Pro Late Model Championship, too, is really tightening up. I mean, when you look at all the different winners we've had this year, and still Kyle Campbell, who's been MIA since he picked up the first 2 wins, he's still in striking distance.
Yeah, still a long way to go there for the Pro Late models. They were able to, I believe, get their race in. Rains came. They were earlier in the day, and then the late models ran later in the evening. But yeah, congratulations to Tristan. They get younger every year.
They do.
At that level. I mean, 14-year-old winner at North Wileksboro Speedway, one of the more historic venues in this country. And we talked about Treyten Lapcevich. He was going to be, if the win stayed, the first international winner. Yeah. At North Wileksboro Speedway, but unfortunately lost that distinction and had to settle for second.
Yep, 100%. Man, at 14 years old winning at North Wileksboro, I was barely winning quarter midget races at 14 years old. So congratulations again to everybody at North Wileksboro Speedway. Some other winners this weekend, Dawson Sutton, who we've mentioned, who's ran a couple truck races for Rackley War. Of course, he's with Rackley team in the late model division, won $15,000 at the Jegs Tour win, or got the Jegs Tour win out at Owasso. And DJ Shaw, familiar name in the Northeast, won the American Canadian Tour, $10,000 to win. Milton Cat Midsummer Classic at White Mountain in New Hampshire. Well, Kyle, we need to talk to this young man because I know he's got a lot to say. That's Treyten Lapcevich, of course. Drama at North Wilkesboro Speedway, but we're not just talking about that. He's got a race coming up, actually, as we record this show tonight. Yes, he's running the Battle at Berlin in the late model division as well. So Treyten Lapcevich, he's coming up next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering, and joining us now live via the car, probably on his way to Berlin Raceway here today, that is Treyten Lapcevich. Treyten, 2023 NASCAR Canada Series champion, now moving over to run late models here full-time. And Treyten, let's first talk about this weekend at North Wileksboro Speedway. It's been hot and heavy in the news. Cars Tour releasing their disqualification report yesterday after you picked up the win in the late model stock division, your first career late model stock win at the time. Just walk me through the emotions of the win on Saturday and then suddenly finding out yesterday on Tuesday that was wiped away.
Yeah, definitely a big win for us. There's kind of no better place to get your first win at North Wileksboro. So it was really big, riding the elevator and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, we left the track knowing we had won the race. I mean, they shook our hand in tech. We passed post-race inspection, no problem. Loaded the car up on the trailer. No parts left our car. They were all still there. And then, to find out on, I guess it was more so Monday afternoon, we were kind of, we were informed about the potential of our disqualification, and then hearing about it on Tuesday. It's disappointing for sure. I don't want to say a whole lot about it because we're obviously going to go through the appeal process and hopefully get this overturned in hopes that the Cars Tour does the right thing. I think they didn't realize a lot of the mistakes that they've made here and didn't want to admit to a lot of those mistakes anyways. So I think a lot of that's going to come out really, really soon. I think so. And I think a lot of people have picked up on a lot of it already anyways. I'm just kind of reading through the comments on social media and whatnot. But yeah, it's disappointing for sure. But I'm really hoping that, we can get this turned around and get it headed back in our direction.
Does this, I know you came down from the NASCAR Canada Series, obviously a very successful season last year to run the Cars Tour full-time this year. How does this taint your kind of impressions of the Cars Tour as, we have known it this year?
Yeah, it's, I was really, had a lot of respect for the Cars Tour officials, and I've heard a lot of rumors about the Cars Tour too, about kind of corruption in the past, mistakes around different calls. But so far this year, they had treated me really well. We had never had any issues. We kind of, we've been running pretty good all year. We've had quite a few top fives, a lot of top tens, and really, really no issues. But just these last 2 weeks for sure have been really eye-opening. Hickory was an eye-opening one. There was the incident with where my team was defending an official, and we ended up getting backlash from the series too. So it's kind of like, where do you want us to go there? Let someone get beat right to the ground, or stand in and support them when they didn't have the support from other officials. So and then this past weekend too, it's another eye-opening event. I mean, I think we know all the facts. We know what happened. And like I said, it's a matter of time until all that comes out. And, I think people are kind of skeptical of the series already, given the announcement and the way that they did it. I don't really think they did it the right way. And especially trying to say that we admitted to something or we admitted to misinterpreting the rules. None of that is true. Like I said, it'll come out in due time.
Obviously, this appeal process will probably take some time, but is there solace or maybe even a little confusion of, we've never seen this, a disqualification, but you're scored second instead of at the tail of the field. So did that even kind of get a little confusing as well?
I didn't even pick that up, honestly. I kind of just, when I saw disqualification, I just, I figured they're probably, taking away our points and money completely.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, we're still trying to digest everything for sure, but appreciate your honesty too. And I know, again, like you said, the appeal process will happen. I'm sure we'll hear more news in the meantime. But let's kind of transition to just the fact that you got to just put that behind you because you're going racing today at Berlin. So what are the prospects looking ahead to tonight and racing at the Money in the Bank Battle of Berlin for $40K here tonight?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a lot of fun. We had a full day of testing yesterday in our Evram number 32, and We were decent. We learned a lot, and that was kind of the big thing that we're hoping to pick up from yesterday. We've ran our super twice now at Five Flags in New Smyrna, and those are both tracks where you kind of get to stretch the legs of the super. Big tracks, a lot of grip. But Berlin's completely different. Being my first time here, I was expecting it to have as little grip as it did. That kind of showed really early on in practice that we needed to go in and tighten the car up, take a lot of motor out of it. And that's kind of the big thing that we're working on going in today. So we got 2 40-minute practice sessions today that we're going to get to fine tune some stuff and hopefully be better tonight.
Treyten, obviously you've never been to Berlin before as a competitor until this weekend. How do you anticipate that track changing? Practice earlier today, but you're going to race, well into the evening and past sunset here tonight. How do you think things will change over the course of the event?
Yeah, I feel like we're going to gain a lot of grip tonight. When the sun goes down, it gets a little bit darker. That being said, I do think there's going to be a lot of fall off regardless, and we kind of got a plan for that in practice. I mean, it's just kind of something that we're working on today. We didn't get to do a whole lot of long runs yesterday just because we were trying to fine tune or get the car close anyways, because I think we showed up and we were quite a bit off. So just kind of making those quick runs and making quick adjustments to kind of get the car somewhere where it needed to be. And then today during the 2 40-minute sessions, we're going to, hopefully make some longer runs and have a better idea what the car is going to do later tonight.
What's been the biggest, I don't know if it's necessarily surprise or adjustment that you've had to make going from NASCAR Canada, where the cars are completely different and all the success you've had there, to now running supers and late model stocks? I mean, if you had to change your driving style at all, or is there any similarities at all that you can take away, or was this just a completely new venture this year?
Yeah, for sure. So I've kind of looked at the late model stocks. They're kind of like a mixture of the Pinty's car and then the straight rail late models. So I did a lot of pro late model racing. Kind of started pro lates when I was 13 and had been running pro lates kind of periodically in between when I was making the NASCAR Canada Series starts as well. So I've kind of looked like the late model stocks as a mixture of the two. Obviously, the late model stocks are a perimeter chassis closer to the Pinty's cars, but the front suspension is kind of closer to those pro late models and the super late models that I'm running here today at Berlin. So it's been quite the adjustment. The big thing has been getting used to the truck arms in the rear. That's something that I've never dealt with at all. And I think just being down in Hickory and being at the shop working on them and building that relationship with Chad and the guys has been the thing that's helped me the most, and that and seat time for sure.
Final question for you from me. You're obviously at Battle at the Berlin tonight. Any other big marquee events on your schedule coming up here before the season's over?
Right now, nothing for certain. Would love to do Martinsville with the late model stocks. I think that's next month. So hoping to be there. Other than that, we'll probably mix in some more super late model racing come the end of the year at a couple of the big ones there.
Finally, I know big race tonight, but then when we go back racing with the Cars Tour, it's the postponed Ace Speedway next Friday. How do you think you'll approach that week? No matter what happens with this appeal process, but what will it be like going back in that series after what happened this past weekend? I mean, is it one of those that you just have to basically answer all the questions with your driving on the racetrack, maybe try to go out and win and put all that to bed, or how do you approach that here in a couple weeks?
Well, I think that's definitely it. We're going to show up to Ace guns ablazing. Kind of it being postponed another week. It's a really good opportunity for us because I wasn't going to have a chance to test the car at Ace before the race on Friday, just because how the schedules worked out for Berlin on Wednesday, obviously. So, having that extra week is an advantage for us for sure. I struggled at Ace a little bit in the spring. It was kind of a different track, but that means that I feel like we've learned. I've learned and that relationship with Chad, just so much about the cars and so much about what I need in the cars to really be competitive since then.
Well, awesome. Hey, good luck tonight at Berlin. Good luck the rest of the season. And we'll hopefully catch up to you farther down the road and talk about another win that'll stand in the championship here as we wind down the summer months of 2024. Treyten, best of luck tonight, man.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Treyten Lapcevich getting ready to tackle Berlin Raceway for the Battle at Berlin here as we record on Wednesday. And, of course, chasing a late model stock championship with the Cars Tour. Coming up next, we've got plenty more, including some news and notes and the calendar. It's all next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering. Whew, all right. To be continued, the story of Treyten Lapcevich and what happened at North Wileksboro Speedway. But, of course, best of luck to him tonight at the Battle at Berlin and, of course, the rest of the season. A couple news and notes, Kyle, before the calendar. Weekly Series champion Connor Hall going to step in to the McAnally Hilgeman truck this week at Richmond Raceway. Yours truly will be there with the Motor Racing Network crew. Again, the regular season finale already for the Craftsman Truck Series, but what do you think? Is Connor Hall capable of carrying on the tradition of our regional competitors getting solid top 10, top 5 finishes at a place Richmond where he's a short track racer?
And I was going to say, short tracks will fit right into his liking. We saw it with Butterbean earlier this year. I think a lot of these other regional guys with their one-off opportunities have been making the best of them with top 5, top 10, top 15 finishers. And I think he is very capable of doing that this weekend when the trucks hit the track in Richmond.
That's right. And speaking of one of those drivers that made his debut earlier this year, Connor Zilich making news this week in the NASCAR regional ranks, moving on to the NASCAR Xfinity Series full-time in 2025. That deal was announced on Wednesday. He's going to join, of course, Junior Motorsports, the Trackhouse signee on loan to Junior Motorsports next year. Going to run the number 88 car. Of course, Connor's getting ready to make his Xfinity debut here in a couple weeks at Watkins Glen. Of course, he is a stout road racer when it comes to his IMSA background as well as Mazda MX-5 Cup background. But he's no slouch behind the wheel on ovals either, winning ARCA races. I think he's got 3 ARCA Menards platform wins and, of course, has Cars Tour win as well. So congratulations to Connor. Of course, we're going to probably talk a lot about him here coming up in the next few weeks. All right, to the calendar, K-Rick, and we mentioned it with Treyten. The Battle at Berlin, Jeff Striegel's racetrack up there in Martin, Michigan is hosting the big one here, midweek show, big money show on a midweek here on, as we record this on Wednesday. Of course, $40,000. Speaking of that, big money is the prize, and it's bringing out all the heavy hitters. Carson Hocevar, Eric Jones from the NASCAR circuit, Evan Shotko looking to win another Battle at Berlin. What do you think? Can anybody stop Eric Jones? Because I feel like he may come in with the hottest hand here this week.
Yeah, he's been tough to beat there, these midweek big shows at Berlin Raceway. It's a great entry list. I mean, approaching 40 cars. Berlin Raceway, they do these midweek big money events so well. They have kind of found this magic formula. They do a couple a year with Money at the Bank or Money in the Bank, Battle at Berlin, both Wednesday night events. And, I'm sure Jeff Striegel hasn't slept much the last few nights, but, I hope the forecast is in his favor. I'm sure it's going to be a great event for 250 laps around his Berlin Raceway this week, a wide open field. And you're right, Eric Jones going to be one of the favorites along with Bubba Pollard.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And Carson Hocevar in the field, Evan Shotko, as we mentioned. And you're right, Jeff may look a little tired when I see him at Richmond this weekend, but for sure it's going to be a great night of racing, and we'll talk about all that next week. Of course, good luck to Treyten Lapcevich as well, joining that field. ARCA West at Tri-City, some big news coming out of that camp earlier this week, because going out west to take on the Napa Auto Care 150 at Tri-City is a familiar name. The legend, Greg Biffle, going to go back ARCA racing this weekend. I can't imagine the crowd that's going to show up for the Biff as he takes on the ARCA West competitors, but I like this move, and it's going to be interesting because he's going to plant himself right in the middle of that championship battle between Tyler Reif and Sean Hingorani as well.
At a racetrack that he's very comfortable at. Won the track championship there back in the mid-'90s. Down to 5 to go for the ARCA Menards West, and you mentioned that championship battle going to be hot and heavy this Saturday night. Greg Biffle, he's gotten the itch the last couple of years to get back into competition. We've seen him do some one-off truck deals. Obviously, Texas stands out a few years ago because he won. We saw him do the events in SRX. We saw him do some IROC events.
At Lime Rock.
The IROC event, the one event at Lime Rock a couple of weeks ago. Ran a Crown Vic with Cletus McFarland. So we've seen him kind of pop up everywhere here recently, it seems like. It'll be cool to see him back in an ARCA car this weekend.
100%. And of course, Sean Hingarani, we mentioned with the championship, not with Venturini this week. Jerry Pitts Racing is on the entry list, so does that open the door maybe? Because we know what happened when he rejoined Venturini back at Irwindale, swept the weekend there.
Yep.
Does that open up an opportunity for a Tyler Reif to capitalize, who stayed consistent, all year with his team?
It could. I don't know. I mean, Sean's good.
Yeah.
No matter what car he's driven in. I know there was some questions about why he was in like 3 or 4 teams to end last year and to begin this year. But, he's good wherever he goes. That's why he's the defending champion. Look for him to be strong. Maybe not as strong as he was in Irwindale, but I think he'll be up there toward the front of the field.
Think so, too. Again, that race late, so drink an extra cup of coffee if you're watching on Saturday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern on Flow Racing. Of course, we mentioned, too, Cars Tour was supposed to run at Ace Speedway this weekend. Due to Debbie, they are going to go ahead and move that to next week, so we'll have a preview of the Cars Tour at Ace with Caden and Carson Quapple being the defending winners in both of those divisions. Any other races, Kyle, you have your eyes on this week? I do have the North-South 100 coming up at Florence on Thursday, so as this show drops, I know several teams from down here in the Southeast are headed to Florence, but what else do you have your eye on?
Bowman Gray down to it, just 3 Saturday nights to go. Burt Myers, the championship point leader in the modified division by just 20 over Brandon Ward. They're going to run twin 50s this week. Let's see, the Stafford Speedway up here in Connecticut, we're supposed to be in action. I think Debbie may have other things to say
of course, on
Friday as we begin to kind of wind down the summer months there. And I mean, how do you ignore Kyle Larson? I know we're not a dirt show, but holy cow, what he has been doing the last, 8 days or 7 days. He's, Knoxville Nationals this weekend, and it's hard not to watch that car come to the front. He went, 21st to 1st last week in Peevely. Hasn't been done in over a decade.
No, it hasn't. And then he went 13th to the win on the second night to sweep the Ironman 55. He's now tied for the most Ironman 55 wins. And then he goes out and wins the Front Row Challenge at Oski to lead into the Nationals. So Kyle Larson says, what vacation? Oh, by the way, he went to Italy too. I mean, come on. I mean, seriously. Just when you think you've seen it all. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that. Don't forget Hickory as well as in action on their weekly shows. Riverhead, Thunder Road, and, of course, Berlin has their weekly show on Saturday as well following the battle at Berlin. Well, Kyle, do you have a driver of the week this week before we sign off for this episode?
I do, and I'm going to go with a NASCAR Cup Series driver.
Oh.
Who has made some headlines this week, Daniel Suarez. Won in the NASCAR Brazil Series, a relatively new division to NASCAR. Won at Interlagos. It was a 3-race weekend, and he won race number 2, I believe. The nighttime event was on the podium for the others, or at least toward the front of the field. He becomes the first driver to win 3 international races 3 races in different countries in 1 year. Here in America, one in Atlanta, one in the NASCAR Mexico Series earlier this year, and one in NASCAR Brazil now. So congratulations to Daniel.
Yeah, and he also got married to Julia Piquet down there as well before that race. And I'd be curious now if some NASCAR Canada and NASCAR Euro Series teams aren't going, hey, you still got time to complete the quadruple or I guess more than that, 5-race sweep with all the national series. So really good stuff. Congratulations to Daniel on that. Motor Racing Network is on the air, of course, this week. We are back at it at the Richmond Raceway, all beginning Saturday with Cup Series practice and pole qualifying. That'll air at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, followed by the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series regular season finale, the Clean Harbors 250 at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, leading into Sunday. NASCAR Live Race Day get you set for the Cookout 400 for the Cup Series at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks to Treyten Lapcevich for joining us on this show, for our producer Pat Jaggers and Kyle Rickey. My name is Chris Wilner. We appreciate you tuning in this week to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by our friends at Whelen Engineering and manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering. We'll see you next week here on NASCAR Coast to Coast. Have a good one.